Did you know this is a Sony-owned IP? How dare they move over to the wrong side of history? But I guess that's just the trend these days. Specifically, we've been seeing a lot of games and series that were originally always known as exclusives to Xbox and PlayStation, actually kind of, going around town a bit. And I just want to talk about just how bizarre this all feels. This is one of the earlier examples of that. Return to Popolo Croix? Like LaCroix? I don't know. This is actually a crossover between, that franchise and this franchise, Story of Seasons. Sony actually owns the IP to this franchise right here, so when we go over to the back of this, we can see a funny little trademark of Sony Computer Entertainment right there. Of course, with this being a crossover with Story of Seasons, and Story of Seasons doing like really well on Nintendo consoles, I guess, you know, they just made a licensing agreement with Sony for this franchise. And honestly, not many people in the West, including myself, even know this thing exists. And even less know that it's a Sony-owned franchise, so who cares? Now MLB The Show, on the other hand, oh boy, my favorite PlayStation character, baseball. Now MLB The Show has always been a PlayStation franchise. It's always been developed by a PlayStation studio, that being their San Diego studio. And the fact the big official MLB game was always exclusive to PlayStation consoles, I mean, that was definitely a plus for PlayStation, but it always felt a little weird. Sure, there's been other MLB games available by stuff like 2K and whatnot, but MLB The Show has always been like, this is the baseball game. This is the Madden of baseball, the FIFA of baseball. And I think MLB themselves recognized that and realized if we are exclusive to PlayStation consoles, we are definitely kind of minimizing the amount of baseball fans we can really reach here. So they reached an agreement with Sony to bring MLB The Show to multiple platforms. And ever since 2021, we've gotten MLB The Show on Xbox consoles, and since 2022, we've gotten MLB The Show on Nintendo consoles. Wild as hell. I believe the official thing here is MLB publishes these versions of the game, but because they are developed by Sony's San Diego studio, that's under the PlayStation Studios brand. So, these games have the PlayStation Studios logo on them. Listen, man, I don't give a damn about MLB games, but I had to get these copies. It's absolutely wild. I mean, these are PlayStation games on Xbox and Nintendo. And now, that's something we just gotta get goddamn used to, I guess. But before we get into that, I know this is a little jarring, but let's talk about somebody that paid me. This has already happened a couple of times in some videos, and I've already made a community post about it, but yes, Scott Stash does take sponsorships now. We have a full team here working on videos nonstop. It just helps the team with stability and growth and all that nonsense. So without further ado, here you go.
This video is sponsored by Rocket Money.
I'm so distraught right now, I forgot not to wear green. I just discovered I've been paying for a streaming service I've never heard of, a subscription service I don't know how to cancel, and I've been charged for these multiple times because I don't have a good solution to solve any of this in just a few taps on my smart device. What do I do?
Ha! That do you do? It's Rocket Money, the all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. I can't tell you how many subscriptions I forgot that I'm subscribed to over the years. No, seriously, I can't. But Rocket Money makes it dead simple, identifying all of your subscriptions in a single list. From there, you can select the ones you don't want anymore, and Rocket Money may be able to help you cancel with just a few taps. Rocket Money has helped its customers save up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. They've also helped customers save over $500 million in canceled subscriptions.
Wow! If I can take control of my finances with Rocket Money, the sky's the limit on what you can do with it.
No, this guy in the scenario is also taking control of your finances with Rocket Money.
Well, that settles it! Take control of your finances today with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/stash to get started for free.
Okay, now, where was I? I screamed for multiple reasons. One, this is wild to see. Two, This is scary to see. I don't like this game. The whole concept of MLB The Show going multi-platform was definitely pretty interesting, but the reason as to why they went multi-platform seems to be, the reason why everybody is trying to go multi-platform these days. Of course, a company like Sony is doing it in very particular ways. I mean, MLB The Show, they just straight up had to make that multi-platform. But here we have LEGO Horizon Adventures. Basically, a goofy retelling of Horizon Zero Dawn in LEGO form. And listen, I like Horizon. It's a solid video game franchise. But Sony has been shoving it down our damn throats for the past couple of years. And this was kind of the breaking point. A LEGO adaptation? Like, damn, you really want this to become like the next big ass thing. Like, oh my god, we have one of the greatest franchises of all time, Horizon. You can tell by the fact they made LEGO versions of it. Definitely trying to appeal to a wide market with this. I mean, LEGO games are very well known for taking, maybe some PG-13-esque franchises, specifically movie franchises, and adapting them into that traditional LEGO formula where, kids and their parents can all play together and have a good time. Of course, this game is inspired by, the traditional LEGO formula by TT Games, but it isn't done by TT Games, and it mainly does its own thing. Its own thing being kind of boring. It's a perfectly competent game. It's well done, but there's not a lot of like puzzles in this, so for the most part, it's just like a bunch of combat. You just keep moving forward, you kill all the enemies, you keep moving forward, you kill all the enemies. And the combat is decent in this game, but it gets old very quickly. Everything ends up looking the same in this game, even though it all looks nice. But yeah, I mean, this just kind of feels like they were desperately trying to make a Horizon game that can appeal to, families. It's like I'm saying, like, I like the Horizon games, but it does feel like Sony is desperately trying to find every single avenue to expand this franchise, turn it into like the next big blockbuster $1 trillion franchise. They're like, oh, we got to do a family-friendly LEGO adaptation of the first game. That'll get people to be interested in the first game and interested in the series. And, if we want to do that, well, we should put it on the Nintendo Switch. I always find it a little oddly patronizing when the Nintendo version of certain games is like the fucking baby boy version. It's like when they brought over like all these Final Fantasy games over to the Nintendo Switch, and then they brought over Final Fantasy 15 ... Pocket Edition HD. The fucking mobile phone version of the game. That's the one that the Nintendo Switch got. I'm like, great. But I mean, I guess this makes sense to do if Sony wants Horizon to be a bigger and bigger franchise, If you want your franchise to get super, super big, either you have to have like this once-in-a-lifetime hit on your hands, or you have to start doing stuff like this. I mean, the whole point of LEGO Horizon Adventures is to appeal to families, and the Nintendo Switch is kind of the go-to de facto family console. I'm sure they decided to do this because, like, hey, LEGO Horizon Adventures, even if it was like this amazing game or something, it wasn't gonna sell consoles. It wasn't gonna be like, oh yeah, this is your full-blown replacement for Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, no, it's definitely a very special case. That doesn't make it any less strange to see this full-blown Sony IP on a Nintendo console. Like, it does everything, man. They have the PlayStation Studios logo at the very start. Hell, you can even unlock costumes based on like Sackboy and Ratchet and Clank in this game. So just seeing all of these PlayStation things in an official Nintendo Switch game, it is a bit surreal. But hey, Sony did this because they care about the health of their franchises. They want Horizon to reach the most people possible. Which is in fact the exact opposite reason we got Freedom Wars on Nintendo Switch. They don't care about this franchise, which is why it's on Nintendo Switch. So Freedom Wars was actually one of the final major Sony first-party Vita games they released. I believe this came out around like 2014 or so. And then Freedom Wars Remastered was like randomly announced via like a YouTube trailer drop. I remember seeing that sometime in like late 2024. And this is on the PS5. This is on PC now, but it's it's also on Nintendo Switch. And now it's published by Bandai Namco. Even though, you know, at the very bottom here, you know, we do get a little license by Sony Interactive Entertainment right here. And I guess Sony and Bandai Namco kind of entered a bit of an agreement with some of their lesser franchises recently, because in the Nintendo Direct from March of 2025, they announced Patapon is coming, which was a PSP franchise owned by Sony, and a new entry of the Everybody's Golf series is coming to Nintendo Switch. So it's just like, yeah, I feel like Sony is kind of thinking like, okay, we still own these franchises, but we don't care. And if Bandai Namco is willing to publish and just take care of these things for a bit, yeah, just go for it. Honestly, reminds me of what Sega was doing for a bit there. I mean, you have the Panzer Dragoon remake, House of the Dead remake. Those weren't actually published by Sega. They were licensed by Sega, but those were handled by, like, Forever Entertainment. Then you also have stuff like Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap and Streets of Rage 4. Again, licensed by Sega, but not published by them. You know, for a bit there, they were kind of going like, yeah, screw it, we're not doing anything with these franchises. If you want to take them, yeah, sure, we still own them, but yeah, you can make a game, publish a game, and, you know, we'll just be like, yeah, good job, buddy. Which is a pretty good solution to these companies having series that they just aren't doing anything with. Like, why not? You just license them out to a company that's willing to deal with them for you. And you still retain ownership. You can make some money off of it, but you don't have to worry about a lot of the development costs and publishing costs that come with putting out a game like this. But that's something Sony is more than willing to take on when it comes to bringing a lot of their big console games over to PC. That's just kind of something Sony kind of started, I believe, with Horizon Zero Dawn years ago when they brought that game over to PC, and now it's basically like every single big PS5 console game, it's exclusive to the console for a little bit there, but after like a year or so, it eventually all comes to PC. And obviously, I mean, Sony wants to do this because they don't really view the PC as much of a competitor. I feel like at this point, if you're a PC gamer, you're a PC gamer. There's a chance that a Sony PS5 exclusive is gonna make you want to buy their console, but for the most part, I think most PC gamers are like, nah, I like the PC, I'll just stick with that. And releasing these games on PC like a year later kind of gives Sony the opportunity to resell the game at full price again. Hell, I'm sure there's a lot of people that bought these games on PS5, and then when it came to PC, they bought it again to play, you know, at max settings or play with mods or even like play it on like their Steam Deck or something like that. But I think the main reason this is all happening is because these development costs are getting so outrageous with video games. While video games have also become like the biggest form of entertainment out there. Like, it makes more money than anything, but that still doesn't make it hurt any less when like a game costs like $400 million to make. And it is sort of getting to the point where, at least on the Sony and Microsoft front, a lot of people are kind of just buying consoles based on just like what console their friends have, or like what brand they feel like they really want to support there. Like, oh man, you know, like, do you have more digital purchases on Xbox, or are your friends on Xbox, or, you know, do you like the Xbox controller more? I don't know. Gaming is so big right now that I feel like a lot of people just end up going like, well, I need to buy a video game console. It's just how it is. Like, have you seen how many PS5s they've sold? Like 75 million at this point. And this is a console that everybody's like, where are the goddamn video games at? It just keeps selling, regardless of there being like, oh my god, heavy hitting must-have exclusives. The PS5 has a wide array of really awesome games that are mostly exclusive to it. I'm thinking stuff like, you know, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, Demon's Souls, then you have God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man 2. But all of these games either eventually came to PC, had like a PS4 version available, or were like remakes in the case of Demon's Souls. So it's like, why has the PS5 sold like 75 million units in like 4 years? Well, in my opinion, I feel like it's just kind of at the point where you don't really need to sell people on a new PlayStation console. They'll just eventually buy it when it makes sense for them to. That plus probably a billion other reasons, like console exclusives, at least in Sony's eyes and other companies' eyes, just don't hit as hard as they used to. They may be important, but they just aren't as important. as they once were. And as costs are getting greater, it just makes sense to expand horizons, especially when you're trying to do all these other things. Like, hey, Sony's trying to make a bunch of movies and TV shows based on all their franchises. Well, if you want people to give a damn about half of these games, you need to give them more options to experience them. So something like The Last of Us with the HBO show, yeah, you know, they were definitely making sure you could experience The Last of Us, not only, you know, like remade on PS5 and all of that, but also on PC as well. But hey, it still is very obvious that Sony cares about console exclusivity, because as much as they want to make sure you have as many options as possible to play The Last of Us, none of those options include the Xbox. It's been wild what's been going on with this brand, man. I think they change what they're doing every single goddamn day. One minute, Indiana Jones is exclusive. The next minute, oh yeah, sure, it's coming to PS5. It's like, oh yeah, we care about the console ecosystem. Nope, never mind. We just want to put everything everywhere. And listen, I'm down for whatever Microsoft really wants to do. If they really want to go fully multi-platform, whatever. I mean, Microsoft already does that stuff. I can use Microsoft Office on a Mac. It's still a little creepy that I can do that, but I can do that. But it feels like they constantly don't know if they want to keep some things exclusive or want to go fully multi-platform. I don't know what they're doing anymore. And I feel like they sort of dipped their toes with this years ago with Minecraft. You know, they actually bought Mojang, you know, who develops Minecraft, years ago, but that didn't stop them from putting Minecraft on competitors' consoles. You know, like they would put it out on PlayStation 3, Vita, Wii U, Nintendo Switch, new 3DS, all of that junk. And they kept Minecraft, and I think they definitely saw the value in making Minecraft as accessible as possible. At any point, they could have made Minecraft an Xbox exclusive, Xbox and PC only, all of that, but they never did. I think there were always thoughts like, oh, okay, what, you know, like they'll keep the original Minecraft, you know, multi-platform, but, you know, if they'd ever make maybe like a sequel to Minecraft or whatever, you know, oh, that would probably be Xbox exclusive. Every single spin-off they've done of Minecraft, you know, Minecraft Dungeons, Legends, Story Mode, every single one of them has always been multi-platform. But this was always kind of a special case. You know, Minecraft doesn't even really feel like it's like an Xbox-owned franchise. You know, it is, but it isn't. It was definitely really interesting to see Cuphead hit the Nintendo Switch, because that was an Xbox and PC exclusive for a bit there. And while Microsoft didn't publish the game, I think they definitely helped out with it. And then later down the line, they announced Ori and the Blind Forest, and then Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And, you know, like, hey, those are just full-blown Xbox IPs. And they got announced for Nintendo Switch. And now, Microsoft even played ball with Nintendo and put Banjo-Kazooie and Steve from Minecraft in Smash Brothers. There were definitely all of these little moments here and there where it's just like, okay, you know, like, it's a case-by-case basis. Microsoft will put certain games on Nintendo platforms, maybe on Sony's platform too. Something like Psychonauts 2, that was a very unique case. Double Fine actually crowdfunded that game and was originally going to publish it themselves for PlayStation and Xbox consoles. And then Microsoft bought Double Fine, so, you know, like when they actually finally released Psychonauts 2, you know, they still released it on PS4. And, you know, the PS4 game did have the Xbox Game Studios logo at the beginning of it, so, you know, that was something. But for the most part, Microsoft was still putting out their games on Xbox and PC, and that was basically it. And then just everything just came crumbling down. I think this was mostly brought on when Microsoft purchased Activision Blizzard because, they spent like, literally like, you know, all their money on that. And I think Microsoft had to start seeing some like actual like profits from their game division, after that purchase. Like they're like, all right, you know, if we're going to spend $80 billion on a single damn video game studio when our video game studios aren't even putting out anything, okay, well, let's start putting shit out on PlayStation because this isn't working. We ended up getting Sea of Thieves on PS5. There was Grounded on PS5 and Nintendo Switch. Obsidian's Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, a bunch of Xbox games ended up coming over multi-platform. And then I think the big nail in the coffin was Forza Horizon 5. Forza Horizon 5 on PlayStation 5. Like, Wow. That is absolutely crazy to see. But hey, you know, Forza Horizon is definitely different from, you know, the sim racers like Gran Turismo and actual Forza Motorsport. But hey, I mean, you know, like you might get some Gran Turismo players to try Forza Horizon and be like, oh, damn, this is actually really, really good. And then when the next Forza Horizon comes out, you could make that exclusive to Xbox, and then they'd have more of an incentive to play it on Xbox. But who knows at this point, man? Microsoft just might put everything out multi-platform on launch day one at this point. Who knows? Indiana Jones was a legitimate Game of the Year candidate when it released in December of 2024. I mean, that game is incredible, but they announced it was coming to PS5 like spring of 2025. Obviously, Microsoft is now completely shifting over to, okay, we're not really caring if these games are actually exclusive to Xbox consoles. Rather, if you get an Xbox, get Game Pass, and then these games will be available day one on Game Pass for free. You know, that was the case with Indiana Jones. That ended up being the case with Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Sure, you can play these games on PS5, but on Xbox, you get them as a part of your stupid little subscription service. That just feels like it's their strategy here. I mean, like, they're definitely moving towards a future where the Xbox console is just an option to play video games. I don't really think it's going to be a focus for Microsoft moving forward. I mean, there was this big ad campaign they did where they said, oh, this is an Xbox, this is an Xbox, this is an Xbox, and it's just like every device with Wi-Fi on it practically. And I think a lot of people kind of looked at that and they were like, damn. I think the direction Microsoft is going in makes sense, but it's also kind of depressing because while there is always competition in the video game sphere, it doesn't necessarily feel like it. It doesn't really feel like Sony has somebody that's lighting a fire under their ass to try harder, do bigger things, do better things. And I can understand why Microsoft is doing what they're doing right now, but part of me feels like they're just kind of feeling defeated at this point, and they're just going like, well, we might as well put all of our games out multi-platform on the PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. That's how we'll make the most money. And I'm like, sure. But part of me kind of wanted to see Microsoft try a little harder with like actually putting out games. Like it's been one hell of a couple of years for Microsoft where it's hard to even look back at anything from like the Xbox One generation onward and be like, oh yeah, that's what Microsoft put out this year. You look back at the Xbox 360 days and Microsoft was going hard with exclusives. And it definitely showed back then how important console exclusives were. Now, of course, a lot of people don't like console exclusives because an Xbox Series X and a PlayStation 5 are practically the same power-wise, but for some reason, oh, this game can only be played on this box, and this game can only be played on that box. When it's like, technically speaking, why does that limitation exist? Why do I have to own both consoles? They're both practically the same. So I do like this, as it does give consumers more options, but I'd be completely lying if I'd said I do miss that feeling of like competition between Xbox and PlayStation, where it feels like they're really trying to one-up each other, and they're really trying to show you why you should own my console compared to your console. Because at this point, while I do like my Xbox Series X, god damn, man, like I would never recommend that to most people. I'd just be like, yeah, just get a PS5 or just get a PC. But all that is not to say we haven't seen stuff like this throughout gaming history before. I mean, like, games that were once originally like, oh man, like all about being a console exclusive, like, oh man, the entire identity of them is tied to a particular brand and a particular console. Like, many times, like, we have seen them jump ship or do something a little funny. I mean, no, let's take a look at PlayStation. We can go all the way back to the N64. Wipeout 64 on that console. Wipeout is a Sony-owned IP developed by a Sony-owned studio. And technically, they've done PC game releases a bit here and there. The original Helldivers actually came to PC back in the day, alongside Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. And Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls got PC releases, even though I believe those weren't published by Sony. Still, I mean, the precedent was there for games that, you know, you really do associate with the PlayStation brand heading over to PC. And then there's a bunch of other crap out there that, like, you know, we can make the argument about. No Man's Sky was originally PS4 exclusive, and it eventually went to all other platforms. And Sony did help a lot with the original launch of No Man's Sky. You know, they published the PS4 version, they really pushed it in their press conferences, and they did a lot of advertising help with them. Death Stranding came over to Xbox, which is strange considering that used a Sony created and owned engine, the Decima engine. It was developed by Guerrilla Games, who's a Sony-owned studio. They helped out with Death Stranding. So even though Sony didn't publish the PC and Xbox versions of Death Stranding, like, it's still kind of like a Sony-developed game, a PlayStation-developed game on Xbox consoles. I know, we can go all the way back to the PS1 days with Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. This is one of the most famous exclusives just ripped from a console. And it's because Universal Interactive, I believe, owned a big enough stake in Crash Bandicoot that they were like, no, we're going multi-platform with this crap. And as rights get passed around throughout the years, now Activision owns Crash Bandicoot, which now technically makes Crash Bandicoot owned by Xbox. So that made Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, who were once big Sony PlayStation 1 exclusive mascots, published by Sony, all of that stuff. Their original games were developed by Sony-owned studios. You know, Spyro was developed by Insomniac, Crash Bandicoot was developed by Naughty Dog. Now, they're owned by Microsoft. And those original games went multi-platform within the past generation with the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy and Spyro Reignited trilogy and Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Because all these studios end up getting bought by competitors and all of this nonsense, it's just strange. Because Bungie, who's originally the big Microsoft developer, owned by Microsoft, developed Halo, now they're owned by PlayStation, which makes Destiny a PlayStation IP, so that's on multi-platform. Sony bought Blue Point Games, who are known for their remasters and remakes and all of that. And, you know, they worked on certain things that, you know, were on Xbox, on Nintendo. You have the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, which in of itself is finally taking Metal Gear Solid from the PS1 and making that available on something other than a PlayStation console or PC. So that's another exclusive kind of jumping ship. But on top of that, the Master Collection had games in it that were developed by Blue Point Games, who's now a Sony-owned studio, who you see the logo for in the Metal Gear Master Collection on Nintendo Switch and Xbox. It's a Sony-owned studio. Bah! This stuff is just non-stop nonsense going on all at once. Years ago, it felt like it would be like sacrilege for certain studios that are owned by certain companies to make games for other platforms, or for certain games to appear on certain platforms. And now it's just like, hey, buddy, anything's possible. Back in the day, it was crazy to see Sonic on anything that wasn't a Sega console. Even before Sega dropped out of the console race with the discontinuation of the Dreamcast, they actually did something a little weird. You know, they actually did a Sonic game for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Now, why the hell is this? I don't know. I mean, I guess Sega just didn't really consider themselves to be a vital enough member of the video game handheld market where they were like, yeah, screw it, sure. We'll help you out, SNK. That's the thing. If you're not a direct competitor, I think it's a lot easier to warrant putting out like some exclusive content on that platform, which is what Microsoft did back during the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS days. You know, we got Banjo Pilot, Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge, a Viva Pinata game on the Nintendo DS. All Microsoft-owned IPs, but, you know, Microsoft wasn't in the handheld game, so why do they care? This is just putting out their IPs on a platform that's more readily used by children. So it's just like, yeah, I mean, like, why wouldn't you do that? And it all comes full circle because that's basically the whole reason why Sony put out Lego Horizon Adventures on Switch. I mean, hell, after they put Halo on the Mac, anything's possible. Hell, we can even see certain Nintendo things kind of make the jump over to other platforms. Now, Nintendo made stuff in-house. Yeah, that stuff still is pretty locked down. Nintendo did make the jump to mobile devices back in 2016, and that was a huge deal. For years there, Nintendo was pretty much saying how like, oh yeah, we'll never do mobile devices. They're a direct competitor with their handheld line, all of that. And I think they eventually kind of like woke up and understood that like, hey, mobile devices are here to stay. I think it was good they actually did that because it eventually turned out they were like, well, shit. We don't need this. You know, they put out Miitomo on iPhone, and then Super Mario Run, Fire Emblem Heroes, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, Dr. Mario World, an original title, Dragalia Lost, and Mario Kart Tour. After Mario Kart Tour, I mean, Nintendo would do, like, some things here and there, like Pikmin Bloom. But at the end of the day, it's obvious that mobile games are not nearly as big of a priority for Nintendo as they were a couple years back. The mobile games were sort of seen as advertisements for Nintendo's brand. You know, hey, let's put games that give you the general vibe of traditional Nintendo console games on mobile, adapted for mobile, and then, you know, like billions of people are gonna be seeing, oh, Nintendo apps. Oh, yeah, sure, I wanna play Mario Kart on my phone. And you know what? Even if some of these games were fine, it just kind of got people going, damn it, I just want to play regular Mario Kart. And you know what? That's kind of the best advertising you could really get out of those games right there. Like, you know, Mario Kart Tour just made people go, I want to play Mario Kart. And you know, hey, look what ended up being one of the best-selling games of all time, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Of the big three, Nintendo is the most stubborn when it comes to locking exclusives down and also kind of upholding the traditional idea of console exclusives. I mean, with the Nintendo Switch 2, you even have an exclusive From Software game, which is just like unheard of from Nintendo. That was like one of the most surprising announcements Nintendo's ever made. Which, hey, that's something that somebody like Sony would usually do. You know, they've already worked with From Software with exclusive games like Bloodborne. And now Sony has done some lame-ass deals where they got like Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo as exclusives for a little bit there. The Final Fantasy VII Remake series, Final Fantasy 16, you know, all of these games were kind of PlayStation exclusive. Sony made sure they were PlayStation exclusive at least for a bit. And Nintendo does similar things, you know, like they work with Square Enix too, and, you know, they made certain games like Octopath Traveler exclusive for a bit. But you know what's funny is when Microsoft tried to do this exact tactic, they were like absolutely crucified. Remember back when Rise of the Tomb Raider was an Xbox console exclusive? People were pissed. Like they were like, that's fucked up. You know, like this game would have been multi-platform, but Microsoft just gave them a bunch of money and it's exclusive for a bit there. And like they were like, this is bullshit. And now Sony is doing like the exact same thing. Nintendo is doing the exact same thing. Like, this is just a normal practice. I don't really know why Microsoft was getting shit on a lot for this. Probably because nobody wanted to buy an Xbox One at that time, and they were just kind of pissed that the next Tomb Raider game was exclusive to it. And now Microsoft just doesn't really care about exclusives anymore. It seems like Microsoft's main priority is to become just like one of the biggest publishers of video games out there. And then I feel like Sony just really wants their own like IPs, like their own library of franchises to get as big as possible. They want a huge return on investment for how much money they're pumping into these games. So yeah, it makes sense to put them out on PC, kind of take a look at some of the franchises you have and go, okay, maybe we can put that on like Nintendo Switch. Maybe we can make that multi-platform. And then with Nintendo, I mean, like they've obviously dabbled in this kind of stuff. They put their games out on mobile, and even if that is a bit of a different thing, like it isn't completely the same as what Sony and Microsoft have been doing, it's still Nintendo putting out some of their biggest first-party franchises on something that isn't a Nintendo machine. But as it stands, it's obvious with the direction the video game industry is going, the console exclusive, the idea of what the console exclusive is changing every single day. And it's definitely weird, man, but honestly, like, I'm not really freaking out about it. I think it's good for people to have options. I think it's good for a lot of these Microsoft games to hit PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. I think it's good to see Sony-owned IP, especially the ones like Freedom Wars, Everybody's Golf, Patapon, the ones that they weren't going to be doing anything with anyways. I think it's great that they're licensing those out and just being like, hey, you know, like, put these out on Nintendo platforms, see how they do. But man, it sure is weird. And I've always been one to see the value in console exclusives, as much as it's annoying and as much as it's just dumb as hell to have to buy a $500 machine that is fundamentally the same as another $500 machine, except this has this game developed on it and this has that game developed on it. At the end of the day, if we want these companies to be firing at all cylinders and working their hardest to provide us with the best experiences possible, console exclusives definitely help them to do that. But as development costs rise and all of these companies want to see their IPs gain more and more success, you know, like if Microsoft wants Halo to be as big as it once was or even bigger, its future isn't on Xbox consoles. Like, yeah, you're gonna have to put this franchise on other platforms if you definitely want it to be as big as humanly possible. Or you could do what Sega did back when, you know, they went multi-platform and they ended up making most of their franchises, like, they ended up making each of them exclusive to different platforms. Like, Sonic was mostly on Nintendo platforms. They put Space Channel 5 only on PS2. Put Crazy Taxi 3 only on Xbox. Just like what? You're going from exclusive to a different kind of exclusive. But regardless of how uncertain the future may seem, I think it'll all be okay. And I'm just very interested to see what comes out of this. Overall, I do miss how aggressive a lot of these companies were with exclusives back in the day. But that's also basically me saying like, oh boy, I miss when companies were nickel and diming me and forcing me to buy another console just for like a couple of different games that could definitely run on the box I already have. But I just miss that intense feeling of competition between all of these different companies. However, I do really value the fact that a lot of these games are more accessible now. You don't need to buy an Xbox to play Forza. You don't need to buy a PlayStation to play God of War or Spider-Man. And the way most of these companies are doing this does still make it so then, hey, like, there is still incentive to buy one console over another. Something like Indiana Jones, like, that was exclusive to Xbox for months. Like, yeah, you could wait for it to come to PlayStation, or you could bite the bullet right now and get it on Xbox along with all the other great games available on that platform. Wait for the PlayStation version.